Before this story begins, wherever life has placed you, remember that true success isn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your heart. In the scorching summer heat of Chicago, where air-conditioned boardrooms shelter the wealthy from reality, a worn mother's apron would become the catalyst for the most powerful transformation a billionaire CEO had ever experienced. What started as a routine job interview would shatter every assumption about worth, dignity, and what it truly means to be rich. This is the story of how one girl's courage and a CEO's forgotten humanity changed everything. A 22-year-old girl walked into the gleaming headquarters of Sterling Industries, wearing nothing but a faded sundress and her dead mother's flour-dusted apron. Maya Rodriguez had no idea that the cold, heartless CEO sitting across from her had grown up in the same poverty-stricken neighborhood. She called home, and what happened next would change both their lives forever. But before this incredible story begins, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment below which city you're watching from. I absolutely love connecting with viewers from around the world. Now, let's begin this journey together. The summer heat in Phoenix was relentless, and Maya Rodriguez felt every degree of it as she sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the interview outfit laid out before her. The faded blue sundress had seen better days, but it was the nicest thing she owned. Next to it lay her most precious possession, her mother's apron, still carrying the faint scent of flour and cinnamon from Rose's final batch of conchas. 6 months ago. Maya, I can't find my backpack, 8-year-old Diego's voice echoed from their tiny kitchen, breaking through her nervous thoughts. It's by the door, Mio, she called back, her voice steadier than she felt. The broken air conditioning unit sat silent in their window, another bill they couldn't afford to fix. Even at 7 in the morning, their cramped apartment felt like an oven. Maya picked up the apron with trembling fingers. The fabric was soft from years of washing, worn thin at the edges where her mother's hands had gripped it during long shifts. At the neighborhood panaderia, Rosa Rodriguez had worn this apron through double shifts, through Diego's hospital stay when he was 5, through every struggle that had defined their small family's life. When you cook with love, people taste it, her mother used to say, tying the apron strings behind Maya's back when she was old enough to help in the kitchen. When you live with love, Mija, people feel it. Never forget that. Diego appeared in her doorway, backpack slung over his small shoulders, his dark eyes worried. You look scared, Maya. Are you scared? She knelt down to his level, straightening his camp t-shirt. At 22, Maya had been his guardian for 6 months now, working 3 jobs to keep them afloat while finishing her business degree online. The interview at Sterling Industries represented everything: a real salary, benefits, a chance to build something better for both of them. A little scared, she admitted, because Rosa had taught her never to lie to Diego. But sometimes being scared means something really important is about to happen. Diego nodded solemnly, then surprised her by wrapping his arms around her neck. Mama's watching, you know, she'll help you be brave. Maya's throat tightened as she hugged him back. After dropping Diego at the community center for day camp, she caught the bus downtown, clutching her worn leather purse that held her resume, references, and Rose's old recipe notebook, the one filled with her mother's careful handwriting and dreams of opening their own bakery someday. The bus ride took 45 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that grew progressively wealthier. As they approached downtown Phoenix, Maya watched through the window as rundown apartments gave way to manicured suburbs, then gleaming office buildings that scraped the desert sky. Sterling Industries occupied an entire block, its black glass facade reflecting the brutal summer sun like a mirror. The lobby took her breath away. Marble floors stretched endlessly under cathedral ceilings, and the air conditioning was so powerful she shivered after the heat outside. Everything gleamed: the reception desk, the security, turnstiles, even the shoes of the business people hurrying past in their expensive suits. Can I help you? The security guard's tone was polite, but surprised as he took in her appearance. Maya realized she must look as out of place as she felt. I have an interview at 10 o'clock. Maya Rodriguez. He checked his computer, his expression softening slightly. Elevator bank B, 32nd floor. Good luck, miss. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Maya stepped into another world of polished perfection. The Sterling Industries logo dominated the wall behind a sleek reception desk, where a woman with perfectly styled hair smiled professionally. You must be Maya. I'm Jennifer Walsh, HR director. Please, have a seat while we finish setting up. The waiting area held 6 leather chairs, 5 of them occupied by other candidates. Maya's heart sank as she took in their appearances: crisp business suits, leather briefcases, confident postures. She was the only woman, the only person under 30, and definitely the only one wearing an apron. A man in a navy suit glanced at her outfit, his expression shifting from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. The woman next to him whispered something behind her hand, and they both smirked. Maya's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin the way Rosa had taught her. Dignity couldn't be taken away, it could only be given up. Miss Rodriguez, Jennifer. Walsh reappeared. We're ready for you. The conference room was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and a massive table dominated the space. 3 people sat waiting. Jennifer, a middle-aged Asian man who introduced himself as Tom Chen, operations manager, and at the head of the table, a man who commanded attention without saying a word. Harrison Blackwell looked like he'd stepped from the pages of a business magazine. Perfectly tailored suit, silver hair, cold blue eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in seconds. Maya had researched him online. 45 years old, self-made billionaire, known for his ruthless business practices and charitable donations that made headlines. Please sit, Jennifer said, gesturing to the chair across from Harrison. Maya sat carefully, very aware of the apron strings beneath her. She placed her hands on the table, noticing how Harrison's gaze lingered on her simple wedding ring, Rose's ring, which Maya wore to remember her mother's strength. Tell us about yourself, Ms. Rodriguez, Tom began, his voice kind but professional. Maya took a breath, feeling the weight of the apron against her back. I'm 22 years old, graduating this December with a business degree from Arizona State Online. I've been working since I was 16, retail, food service, anything that would help support my family. My mother passed away 6 months ago, and I'm now raising my 8-year-old brother Diego. She paused, seeing something flicker across Harrison's face, though his expression remained neutral. I know I don't have traditional corporate experience, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger, but I understand hard work, responsibility, and what it means to fight for the people you love. My mother taught me that excellence isn't about having the most expensive tools. It's about putting your heart into whatever you do. And the apron. Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice cool and measured. Is that part of your professional wardrobe philosophy? The question stung, but Maya met his gaze directly. This was my mother's apron. She wore it every day while working at Panaderia Luna, supporting our family. She passed away before she could see me graduate, but she believed in this opportunity. The apron reminds me that honest work is dignity, no matter where you do it. Something shifted in Harrison's eyes, a crack in that polished facade. For just a moment, he looked almost vulnerable, but it vanished so quickly Maya wondered if she'd imagined it. Your resume shows multiple jobs, but no long-term employment, Jennifer noted, scanning her papers. How do we know you won't leave when something better comes along? Because this isn't just a job to me, Maya replied. It's a chance to build something real. To show my brother that dreams are worth fighting for. My mother worked 3 jobs, so I could go to college. I won't let that sacrifice be for nothing. The questions continued for another 30 minutes. Technical knowledge, problem-solving scenarios, workplace situations. Maya answered as best she could, drawing on her varied experience and the business principles she'd studied. Harrison remained largely silent, but she could feel his attention like a weight dot as the interview concluded. Tom smiled warmly. Thank you, Maya. We'll be in touch within the week. Maya stood, extending her hand to each panel member. When she reached Harrison, his handshake lingered for just a moment. Up close, she could see something haunted in those blue eyes, something that reminded her of her own reflection in the months after Rosa died. Thank you for this opportunity, she said simply. Harrison nodded, his voice softer than before. The apron, your mother would be proud. The words followed Maya all the way to the elevator. All the way through the marble lobby, all the way into the Phoenix heat that hid her like a wall. She had no idea that Harrison Blackwell sat alone in that conference room for 20 minutes after she left, staring out at the city and remembering a woman named Elena who had worn a similar apron, who had loved him unconditionally until cancer took her away. But what Maya didn't know was that this interview would change not just her life, but the heart of a man who had forgotten what love looked like. And the transformation was about to begin in ways neither of them could imagine. Harrison Blackwell had built his empire on calculated decisions, cold logic, and the ability to separate emotion from business. But as he sat alone in the Sterling Industries conference room, watching Maya Rodriguez disappear into the Phoenix heat below, something inside him felt dangerously close to breaking. The young woman's words echoed in his mind. Honest work has dignity, no matter where you do it. It was something Elena would have said back when she wore her own apron and filled their tiny apartment with the smell of homemade tortillas and unconditional love. He pressed his fingers against his temples, trying to push away memories that had no place in a boardroom. Elena Morales had been 23 when they met, working double shifts at a downtown diner while putting herself through nursing school. Harrison was 25 then, fresh out of Harvard Business School and convinced he was destined for greatness. She wore her uniform with the same quiet dignity Maya had shown today, never ashamed of honest work, never apologizing for who she was. Harrison, Jennifer Walsh's voice broke through his reverie. She stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, waiting for his assessment. What did you think of the candidates? Harrison straightened his tie, rebuilding the walls around his heart with practiced efficiency. Scheduled second interviews for Patterson, Williams, and Chen. The usual process. What about Maya Rodriguez? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harrison could feel Tom Chen watching him expectantly from his seat at the table. Both of his senior staff had seen something in the young woman: her intelligence, her determination, her authentic responses to their questions. But Harrison had also seen the way she'd looked at him with those dark eyes so much like Elena's. And that was a complication he couldn't afford. She's not what we need, he said finally, the lie tasting bitter on his tongue. This is a corporate environment. We need someone who understands our culture. Jennifer frowned. Sir, with respect, her academic credentials are strong and her work ethic seems exceptional. Tom mentioned she handled the case study scenario better than any candidate we've seen. She showed remarkable insight into customer service challenges, Tom added, his voice careful but persistent. Her experience in retail and food service actually gives her a unique perspective on consumer behavior. Harrison stood abruptly, gathering his papers. The decision is made. Process the other three candidates and close out her file. He paused at the door, not turning around, and make sure the rejection is handled professionally. She seems like a nice girl. As Harrison walked toward his private elevator, he tried to convince himself he was making the right choice. Maya Rodriguez represented everything he'd worked to leave behind: the struggle, the uncertainty, the dangerous hope that love could somehow be enough. Elena had taught him that lesson in the cruelest way possible, fighting cancer for 2 years while he'd been buried in building Sterling Industries. To see how much pain she was hiding behind her brave smiles. His penthouse office occupied the entire top floor, with panoramic views of Phoenix stretching to the mountains beyond. The space was a monument to success: original artwork, handcrafted furniture, awards and accolades covering one wall. But today it felt like a mausoleum, cold and empty despite the perfect climate control. Harrison loosened his tie and poured himself a scotch from the crystal decanter on his desk. The amber liquid burned, but not enough to wash away the memory of Maya's voice when she talked about her mother. Rosa Rodriguez had been a baker, Maya had said. Elena had loved to bake too, filling their apartment with the scent of cinnamon and sugar while she studied for nursing exams at their tiny kitchen table. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Blackwell, there's a call online to Mrs. Esperanza Morales. Harrison's blood went cold. Elena's Aunt Esperanza, the woman who'd raised her after her parents died. The one person who'd never forgiven him for missing Elena's funeral. Because of a business emergency in Tokyo. He hadn't spoken to her in 15 years. Sir, should I take a message? Put her through, he said quietly. Esperanza's voice was exactly as he remembered, warm but firm, with the slight accent that Elena had worked so hard to minimize in her later years. Harrison, I wasn't sure you'd take my call, Mrs. Morales. This is unexpected. I'm calling because I heard about the girl, Maya Rodriguez. Harrison's grip tightened on the phone. I don't know what you mean. Don't play games with me, Mio. You know exactly what I mean. That girl came to see me yesterday after her interview. She's been working at my neighbor's restaurant, helping them with their books. When she told me about Sterling Industries, about wearing her mother's apron, I knew I had to call you. The room seemed to spin slightly. How did you? Phoenix isn't as big as you think. Harrison, the girl reminds me of Elena. Same fire, same heart, same stupid pride that makes her wear her struggles like armor instead of asking for help. Esperanza's voice softened. Elena used to talk about you, you know. Even at the end. She said you were going to do great things, help a lot of people. She believed in you even when you stopped believing in yourself. Harrison closed his eyes, seeing Elena in that hospital bed, her dark hair gone from chemotherapy, her eyes still bright with love he didn't deserve. Mrs. Morales, I appreciate the call, but she's going to lose her apartment. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? Maya, the girl, she's 3 months behind on rent, working 3 jobs but still falling behind since her mother died. The landlord gave her until Friday to catch up, or she and her little brother are out on the street. Esperanza paused, letting the weight sink in. I thought you should know before you make your final decision about the job. The line went quiet except for the sound of Harrison's own breathing. Through his office windows, Phoenix stretched endlessly, full of people struggling to survive while he sat in his tower of glass and steel, insulated from their reality. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. "Because Elena loved you, and she believed you had a good heart buried under all that ambition. Maybe it's time to prove her right." Esperanza's voice grew gentle. "The girl isn't asking for charity, Harrison. She just wants a chance to work, to build something better for her brother. Isn't that what America is supposed to be about?" After the call ended, Harrison sat motionless for nearly an hour. The sun was setting over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that reminded him of Elena's favorite sundress. She'd worn it on their first date, to a little Mexican restaurant where she'd insisted on paying her half of the bill despite his protest. His desk phone buzzed again. "Mr. Blackwell, I have the preliminary background checks on the final candidates. Bring them in." Jennifer entered with a stack of folders, setting them on his desk with professional efficiency. "Patterson has excellent references, but left his last position under questionable circumstances, possible embezzlement investigation that was dropped. Williams has the technical skills, but 3 previous jobs cite attitude problems with subordinates." Chen seemed solid across the board. "And Maya Rodriguez?" Jennifer looked surprised. "Sir, I thought you'd decided humor me." She opened her tablet, scrolling through the information. "Clean background. Excellent academic record despite working multiple jobs throughout college. Her current employers all give glowing references. The manager at Desert Bloom Cafe says she's the most reliable employee they've ever had. Rose's restaurant mentions she's been helping with their books pro bono, saving them thousands in accounting fees." Jennifer paused. "There's also a note here about volunteer work. She's been teaching basic financial literacy at the community center, where her brother attends summer camp." Harrison stared at the folders on his desk. 3 men with impressive credentials and perfect suits, all of them probably excellent choices for the position. Safe choices, predictable choices. Choices that wouldn't challenge his carefully constructed world or force him to remember what he'd lost. "Sir, is there anything else you need?" He looked up at Jennifer, seeing something in her expression that reminded him why he'd hired her 5 years ago. She wasn't just competent, she was compassionate. The kind of person who saw potential in others and wasn't afraid to advocate for it. "What's your honest assessment of Maya Rodriguez?" he asked. Jennifer didn't hesitate. "She's exactly what this company needs. Fresh perspective, real-world experience, and the kind of authentic passion for customer service that you can't teach. She understands struggle, which means she'll understand our customers who are struggling. And sir," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "I think she'd remind us all why we're here in the first place." That night, Harrison drove through Phoenix neighborhoods he hadn't seen in years. Areas that looked disturbingly similar to where he'd grown up in Detroit. Cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences, apartments with bars on the windows and broken air conditioning units. He found Maya's building easily enough, a tired-looking complex where laundry hung from balconies, and children played in the courtyard despite the late hour. He didn't get out of his car, just sat there watching through tinted windows as life unfolded around him. A woman arrived home from work still wearing a fast food uniform, climbing stairs with the heavy steps of someone who'd been on her feet all day. Teenagers gathered around a broken picnic table, sharing earbuds and laughing at something on a cracked phone screen. An elderly man watered a small garden of vegetables growing in repurposed containers, coaxing life from concrete, and hoped. This was Maya's world. This was where she came home every night after fighting for opportunities in boardrooms, filled with people who'd never had to choose between rent and groceries. And somehow, she'd maintained enough optimism to wear her mother's apron with pride, to speak about dignity and dreams with the same conviction Elena had once shown. His phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. The caller ID showed his daughter's number, and Harrison felt the familiar guilt that came with seeing Rebecca's name. At 26, she lived across the country, in New York, maintaining a careful distance from her father and the empire he'd built at the cost of everything else. "Dad, are you okay? You never call after business hours." "I'm fine. How are things in New York?" "The same. Listen, I can't talk long. I'm meeting friends for dinner." "Was there something specific?" Harrison stared at Maya's apartment building, at the warm light spilling from windows where families were probably gathering for dinner, sharing their days, being present for each other in ways he'd never learned how to be. "Rebecca, you remember Elena?" The silence stretched so long he thought the call had dropped. "Of course I remember Elena. She was the only person who ever made you smile, really smile." "Why? What did you think of her?" Another pause. "I was 13 when she died, Dad. But I remember thinking she was magic, the way she could make you laugh, make you cook breakfast on Sunday mornings instead of working. She made our house feel like a home. Rebecca's voice grew softer. I used to wish he'd married her. She would have said yes, Harrison admitted quietly. I was going to propose the week after she finished nursing school. Had the ring picked out and everything. What stopped you? The cancer diagnosis came first. I thought I was being noble, not wanting to burden her with the marriage when she was fighting for her life. I told myself I was giving her space to focus on getting better. He closed his eyes, remembering the hurt in Eleanor's face when he'd started pulling away, the confusion in her voice when his visits became less frequent. I was a coward, Dad. Rebecca's voice was gentle now, stripped of its usual guardedness. You were scared. That's not the same thing as being a coward, isn't it? When someone you love is dying, and instead of holding their hand, you throw yourself into work. When you convince yourself that building a business empire matters more than being present for the only person who ever really knew you. Harrison's voice cracked. She died while I was in a board meeting in Tokyo, Rebecca. A board meeting that could have been rescheduled, but I told myself it was too important to miss. The silence that followed was heavy with 15 years of unspoken pain. Finally, Rebecca spoke, her voice thick with tears. Is that why you've never let anyone get close since then? Why you and Mom could never make it work? Why you've spent my entire life building walls around your heart? Harrison didn't answer directly, but he knew she was right. After Eleanor's death, he'd married Rebecca's mother in what amounted to a business arrangement to successful people, combining resources to create the appearance of a perfect life. It had lasted 7 years before Sarah finally gave up trying to reach the man behind Harrison's professional facade. There's a young woman, he said finally. She reminds me of Eleanor. Same strength, same dignity, same way of making everyone around her want to be better. I have the chance to help her, too. Give her the opportunity that Eleanor never got to see me succeed at helping others. But I'm scared, Rebecca. Scared of caring again. Scared of failing someone else who deserves better. Then don't fail her, Dad. Be the man Eleanor believed you could be. After the call ended, Harrison sat in his car for another hour watching Maya's building and thinking about second chances. A little boy appeared at one of the windows. Diego, probably the 8-year-old brother Maya was raising alone. He was backlit by warm yellow light, and Harrison could see him talking animatedly to someone just out of view. Maya appeared beside him, ruffling his hair and pointing at something outside. Even from a distance, Harrison could see the love between them, the protective way Maya kept her hand on her brother's shoulder. Eleanor would have loved them both, he realized. She'd always talked about having children someday, about the kind of mother she wanted to be. Maya was living that dream in a way, raising Diego with the same fierce love Eleanor had shown everyone lucky enough to be in her orbit. Harrison started his car and drove home to his mansion in Paradise Valley, to rooms that echoed with emptiness. Despite their expensive furnishings, he poured another scotch and stood on his terrace, looking out at the city lights and thinking about dignity, about aprons, about young women who wore their struggles like armor and their love like wings. The next morning, Harrison arrived at the office before dawn, something he hadn't done in years. He sat at his desk as the sun rose over Phoenix, writing and rewriting the same email until his assistant arrived at 7:30. Mr. Blackwell, you're here early. Jennifer, I need you to make a call. Maya Rodriguez offered her the position. Starting salary $65,000, full benefits, 2 weeks paid vacation to start. He paused, remembering how tired Maya had looked despite her composure. And I want to approve a signing bonus, enough to cover any outstanding financial obligations she might have. Jennifer's face lit up with surprise and approval. Sir, that's wonderful. She's going to be thrilled. There's one more thing, Harrison said, pulling out a business card and writing something on the back. Give her this when you call. Tell her it's from a friend of her mother's. Jennifer looked at the card, Harrison's personal number written in his careful handwriting. With a simple message, Eleanor would be proud. I can only imagine what you're feeling right now, knowing that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that open our hearts to healing. If you're as moved as I am by Harrison's choice to honor Eleanor's memory, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments what was your reaction to this moment of transformation. As Maya's phone rang that morning while she was getting Diego ready for camp, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She had no idea that a man who'd spent 15 years running from love was finally ready to face it again. And she definitely had no idea that her mother's apron had awakened something in Harrison Blackwell that he'd thought was dead, the capacity to hope, to care, and to believe that sometimes the greatest success comes not from what we build for ourselves, but from what we build for others. The transformation was just beginning. and neither of them could imagine how profoundly they were about to change each other's lives. Maya Rodriguez stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 5:30 in the morning, her hands trembling as she tried to apply mascara with the precision of someone who rarely wore makeup. The phone call from Jennifer Walsh 3 days ago still felt like a dream, not just the job offer, but the signing bonus that had covered her back rent and Diego's school supplies for the entire year. She cried in the community center bathroom after hanging up, overwhelming relief mixing with a gratitude so profound she could barely breathe. The business card with Harrison Blackwell's personal number remained tucked in her purse. The mysterious message Elena would be proud, written in careful handwriting, that somehow made her think of her mother. Maya had no idea who Elena was, but something about those 3 words felt like a blessing, like permission to step into a future Rosa had dreamed of but never lived to see. Maya. Diego's voice carried from the kitchen, where he was attempting to make his own breakfast. The cereal box is stuck, she smiled, setting down the mascara and walking to help him. Diego sat at their small table in his favorite Spider-Man pajamas, wrestling with a box of cornflakes that had seen better days. The morning light streaming through their window was already warm. Another scorching Phoenix summer day ahead, but for the first time in months, Maya felt ready to face the heat. Here, let me help. She opened the box and poured cereal into his bowl, adding the last of their milk. Remember, Mrs. Garcia is picking you up for camp at 8. I'll be home by 6, and we can work on that puzzle you wanted to finish. Diego nodded solemnly, then looked up at her with those dark eyes that were too serious for an 8-year-old. Are you nervous about your first day? Maya sat down across from him, smoothing his unruly hair. A little. But you know what Mama used to say, nervousness means you care, and caring means it matters. Diego finished, grinning. It had become their morning ritual, sharing Rose's wisdom like a prayer before facing the day. Maya kissed the top of his head and hurried back to get dressed. She'd found a simple black blazer at Goodwill over the weekend, and paired with her nicest slacks and the white blouse she'd worn to Rose's funeral, it made her look almost professional, almost like she belonged in the gleaming world of Sterling Industries. The bus ride downtown felt different this time. Instead of clutching a worn resume and fighting desperation, Maya carried a new leather portfolio, another gift from the mysterious signing bonus, and wore the quiet confidence of someone who'd been chosen, valued, given a chance. The other passengers looked the same, but Maya felt transformed, like she was seeing the city through new eyes. Sterling Industries rose before her like a monolith of possibility. As she walked through the marble lobby, the security guard, the same one who'd looked surprised at her appearance a week ago, smiled warmly. Congratulations, Ms. Rodriguez. We heard the good news. Welcome to the Sterling family. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt like ascending to another world. Maya checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, touching the small cross necklace Rosa had given her for her quinceañera. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Mija, when you walk into that room, you walk in with the strength of every woman who came before you. Jennifer Walsh met her at the elevator with a genuine smile. Maya, we're so excited to have you join the team. Are you ready for your first day? More than ready, Maya replied, and meant it. The orientation began in a conference room filled with other new hires, all men in expensive suits, who'd started conversations about their previous positions at other major corporations. Maya listened politely, contributing when she could, but mostly absorbed the culture she was stepping into. These were people who spoke in acronyms, who referenced business schools and networking events with casual familiarity. During the break, one of them, a smooth-talking man named Brad from USC Marshall, sidled up to her with a condescending smile. So Maya, what's your background? Where did you come from before Sterling? I've been working in customer service and retail while finishing my business degree, Maya replied evenly. Brad's eyebrows rose. Oh, that's interesting. I came from Goldman Sachs myself. Big adjustment coming to a smaller operation like this. But I figure it's good to diversify the resume. You know? Maya nodded politely, understanding the subtext. To Brad, Sterling Industries was a stepping stone. To her, it was a destination, a chance to build something meaningful. The difference in their perspectives couldn't have been clearer. The morning sessions covered company policies, benefits, and the corporate structure. Maya took careful notes, asking thoughtful questions that made Jennifer nod approvingly. When they broke for lunch, she was surprised to find Tom Chen waiting for her in the lobby. Maya, I hope you don't mind, but Mr. Blackwell asked me to give you a personal tour of the facilities after lunch. He wanted to make sure you understood how all the departments connect. Maya's pulse quickened. She hadn't seen Harrison Blackwell since the interview, but his presence seemed to hover over every interaction at Sterling Industries. Employees spoke of him with a mixture of respect and wariness, as if he were both inspiration and intimidation, rolled into one. Of course, I'd appreciate that very much. Tom led her through departments she hadn't seen during the interview process. The customer service call center, where dozens of representatives fielded complaints and questions. The operations floor, where logistics coordinators tracked shipments across the country. The break rooms, where employees gathered to share quick meals and compare notes about their families. Mr. Blackwell built this company from nothing. Tom explained as they walked. Started with a single truck and a loan he could barely qualify for. Now we employ over 3,000 people across 15 states. But lately he paused, choosing his words carefully. Lately he's been asking different questions. Not just about profits and efficiency, but about impact. About whether we're really serving our communities the way we could be. They stopped outside the executive floor, and Tom's expression grew more serious. Maya, can I speak frankly? Your hiring has caused some discussion among the senior staff. Not because of your qualifications, your interview was impressive, but because Mr. Blackwell personally overrode the selection committee's recommendation. He's never done that before. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. I hope that doesn't mean it means he sees something in you that he values, Tom interrupted. Gently, just be aware that some people will be watching to see if his instincts were right. Don't let that pressure you, just be yourself. That's clearly what got you here. When they reached the 32nd floor, Maya was surprised to see Harrison Blackwell himself waiting by the elevator bank. He traded his formal interview suit for khakis and a white button-down with rolled sleeves, making him look younger, more approachable, but his blue eyes held the same intensity she remembered. Maya, welcome to Sterling Industries. I hope your first day is going well. Very well, sir. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Harrison studied her for a moment, and Maya had the strange feeling he was seeing something beyond her professional facade. Tom, thank you for the tour. I'll take it from here. As Tom disappeared into the elevator, Harrison gestured toward a different corridor. I thought you might like to see our community outreach center. It's a newer initiative, something we're still developing. They walked past executive offices and conference rooms to a section Maya hadn't known existed. Through glass doors, she could see a different kind of workspace, one wall covered with maps of Phoenix neighborhoods, another displaying charts tracking food insecurity and educational disparities. Several people worked at computers, but these weren't the polished executives she'd met earlier. They looked more like social workers, community organizers, people who understood struggle from personal experience. We started this division 6 months ago, Harrison explained, his voice carrying an emotion Maya couldn't quite identify. The idea was to find ways Sterling Industries could give back to the communities where our employees live and work, but we're still figuring out how to do it authentically. How to help without just throwing money at problems we don't really understand. Maya looked at the maps, recognizing her own neighborhood among the highlighted areas. These are the communities with the highest rates of economic instability. Exactly. We can track the data, but we're missing something crucial. We don't have enough voices from those communities helping us design the solutions. We need people who understand what it's really like to worry about rent, to work multiple jobs, to make impossible choices between necessities. He turned to face her directly, and Maya was startled by the vulnerability in his expression. I'm hoping that's where you come in. Your official position is in our customer relations department, but I'd like you to spend part of your time here as well. Help us understand how to build programs that actually matter. Maya's mind raced. This wasn't just a job, it was a chance to be part of something transformative, to bridge the gap between corporate resources and community needs. I'd be honored to help with that. Harrison smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. There's someone I'd like you to meet. He led her to a corner office where a woman in her 50s was reviewing grant applications. She looked up as they approached, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile that reminded Maya of her mother's friend, Mrs. Esperanza. Maya Rodriguez, I'd like you to meet Dr. Carmen Valdez. She runs our community partnerships program. Dr. Valdez stood and embraced Maya like an old friend. Mija, I've been looking forward to meeting you. Harrison told me about your background, about your mother. I think you're going to bring exactly the perspective we need. As they talked, Maya learned that Dr. Valdez had grown up in the same neighborhood where Maya lived now, had worked her way through college and graduate school while raising 3 children. As a single mother, now she held a doctorate in social work and had returned to serve the community that had shaped her. The hardest part of this work, Dr. Valdez explained, is convincing corporations that real change requires more than writing checks. It requires relationships, trust, understanding. It requires people like you who can speak both languages, the language of struggle and the language of business. They spend an hour discussing potential programs, microloans for small businesses, job training, partnerships with community colleges, childcare support for working parents. Maya found herself energized by the conversation, ideas flowing as she connected her lived experience with the resources Sterling Industries could provide. When Harrison walked her back to the main floor, his demeanor had shifted again. The professional mask was back in place, but something warmer flickered beneath it. Maya, I want you to know that your perspective is valuable here. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. He paused at the elevator bank. And if you ever need anything at all, you have my personal number. The rest of Maya's first day passed in a blur of computer training, policy reviews, and introductions to her customer relations team. Her supervisor, a kind woman named Patricia, seemed genuinely pleased to have her aboard and outline projects that would let Maya use her multilingual skills and retail experience to improve customer satisfaction. But Maya's mind kept returning to the community outreach center, to the maps of her neighborhood, to Harrison Blackwell's unexpected vulnerability when he talked about authentic help. There was a story here, layers of motivation she didn't yet understand. At 5:30, as Maya prepared to leave for the day, Jennifer Walsh appeared at her desk with a manila envelope. "This came for you from Mr. Blackwell's office," she said, with a curious smile. "He asked me to make sure you got it before you left." Maya opened the envelope in the elevator, finding a photograph and a brief note. The photo showed a young woman in scrubs and a flour-dusted apron, laughing at something outside the camera's range. She had warm brown eyes and the kind of smile that could light up a room. On the back, someone had written Eleanor Morales, 1985 to 2009. The note was in Harrison's careful handwriting. "Your mother wasn't the only woman who wore her apron with dignity. Eleanor would have loved meeting you. She believed that the best way to honor our struggles is to use them to help others who are still struggling. Thank you for reminding me of that." Maya stared at the photo as the elevator descended, understanding flooding through her. Eleanor, the woman who would be proud. This was Harrison's Eleanor, someone who had touched his life in a way that still shaped his decisions 15 years later. Someone who had worn an apron like roses, who had understood the dignity of honest work and the power of unconditional love. As Maya walked through the Sterling Industries lobby, toward the Phoenix heat, she felt the weight of connection, of purpose, larger than just her own success. She was carrying forward not just her mother's dreams, but Eleanor's as well. To women who had loved deeply, worked honestly, and believed in the possibility of a better world. But here's where everything changed. Maya had no idea that Harrison Blackwell was standing at his office window 32 floors above, watching her small figure disappear into the crowd below. She had no idea that he'd spent the afternoon questioning every assumption he'd made about success, about leadership, about the responsibility that came with power. And she definitely had no idea that her presence at Sterling Industries was about to unlock 15 years of buried pain and transformation that would change not just her life, but the lives of thousands of employees and community members who had been waiting for someone to see them as more than numbers on a spreadsheet. The real journey was just beginning, and neither Maya nor Harrison could imagine how profoundly they were about to transform each other's understanding of what it truly meant to build something worth leaving behind. 3 weeks into her new position at Sterling Industries, Maya Rodriguez was beginning to understand that Harrison Blackwell was a man at war with himself. She'd watched him during department meetings, seen how he'd catch himself before showing genuine interest in an employee's personal story, witnessed the way he'd retreat behind professional distance whenever conversations ventured toward anything resembling human connection. It was as if he'd built a fortress around his heart and spent every day reinforcing the walls. Maya was working late in the community outreach center, reviewing applications for the new microloan program when she'd heard footsteps in the corridor. It was nearly 8 o'clock, and most of the building had emptied hours ago. She looked up to see Harrison standing in the doorway, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, looking like a man who'd been wrestling with demons. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "I didn't realize anyone was still here. I was just..." He gestured vaguely at the wall of neighborhood maps, as if they held answers to questions he couldn't articulate. "It's okay," Maya replied, setting down her pen. "I was just finishing the Wilson family's application. They're trying to expand their restaurant, the one where I used to help with books. Their dream is to hire more people from the neighborhood, give teenagers their first real jobs." Harrison stepped into the room, studying the application over her shoulder. His proximity was unexpected, and Maya caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with something more human, the subtle evidence that even billionaires experience stress, uncertainty, The weight of responsibility. What makes you think they'll succeed where others have failed? He asked. Maya looked up at him, surprised by the genuine curiosity in his voice. Because they understand their community. Mrs. Wilson knows which customers are struggling to pay rent, which teenagers need structure and purpose, which families would benefit from catering jobs for quinceañeras and graduation parties. She doesn't see customers as revenue streams, she sees them as neighbors. Something flickered across Harrison's face, a recognition that went deeper than business analysis. He pulled up a chair beside her, the action so unexpected that Maya's breath caught. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. The lines that spoke of years carrying burdens alone. Elena used to say something similar, he said quietly. She believed that the best businesses grew from love, not strategy. I thought it was naive. Maya's heart clenched at the pain in his voice. What changed your mind? Harrison was quiet for so long that Maya thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his words came slowly. Like each one cost him something precious. She got sick. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3 by the time they caught it. I threw myself into work, telling myself I was building something that would take care of us both when she got better. I convinced myself that love meant providing, that the best way to show I cared was to secure our future. He stared at the application in front of them, but Maya knew he was seeing something else entirely. She died while I was in Tokyo, closing a deal that would expand Sterling Industries into the Asian market. I told myself it was for us, for our future. But really, I was running away from watching her fade. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, thinking of Rose's final weeks. How she'd held her mother's hand through every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night, every moment when fear threatened to overwhelm them both. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't imagine how much that must hurt. Harrison looked at her then, really looked at her, and Maya saw past the polished executive to the broken man beneath. The worst part is that she forgave me, even at the end. Even though I'd failed her in every way that mattered, she told me she understood. She said someday I'd find a way to use what I learned to help other people find their way back to love. The weight of those words settled over them both. Maya understood now why her apron had affected him so deeply. Why he'd hired her despite her lack of corporate experience. Why he'd created this community outreach center that seemed to operate on principles that contradicted everything she'd heard about his ruthless business reputation. Maybe that's what this is, Maya said gently. Maybe helping the Wilson family expand their restaurant, creating jobs for teenagers, supporting families, maybe that's how you honor Elena's memory. Harrison's laugh was bitter. You think a few microloans can make up for 15 years of choosing profit over people? For building an empire while the communities around us struggled? I think, Maya said carefully, that Elena loved you for who you could become, not just who you were. And I think she'd be proud that you're finally becoming that person. Before Harrison could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent text. Maya watched his expression shift from vulnerability back to corporate concern as he read the message. There's been an accident at our Phoenix distribution center, he said, standing abruptly. One of our forklift operators was injured. I need to get down there. Can I come with you? The words were out of Maya's mouth before she'd fully formed the thought. I mean, if he has family, they might need someone who speaks Spanish, someone who understands. Maya, this isn't your responsibility, isn't it? If we're really building a company that cares about its employees as people, not just productivity units, then every injured worker is everyone's responsibility. Harrison stared at her for a moment, and Maya could see him wrestling with old instincts that told him to handle everything alone, to maintain professional distance, to protect himself from caring too much. Finally, he nodded. Get your things. We'll take my car. The drive to the distribution center was mostly silent, but it was a different kind of quiet than the corporate politeness Maya was used to. This felt like to people sitting with shared understanding, with the knowledge that they were crossing into territory neither had fully mapped. The facility was a sprawling complex on the outskirts of Phoenix, where massive trucks loaded and unloaded products that would eventually reach customers across the Southwest. Emergency vehicles lined the parking lot, their flashing lights painting everything in urgent reds and blues. Maya could see employees gathered in worried clusters, still wearing their work uniforms, faces tight with concern for their injured colleague. Inside, they found chaos barely contained by professionalism. The injured worker, a man named Carlos Herrera, had been taken to the hospital, but his family had arrived and was struggling to communicate with the company's insurance representative and legal team. Maya could hear Carlos's wife, Maria, speaking rapid Spanish to their teenage daughter, trying to understand what had happened. what it meant for their family, whether Carlos would be able to work again. Mrs. Herrera. Maya approached the family with the same gentle confidence she'd learned from watching Rosa comfort neighbors during their own crises. Soy Maya Rodriguez. Trabajo para Sterling Industries. Puedo ayudarla. The relief in Maria's eyes was immediate. Finally, someone who could bridge the language barrier, who understood that beneath the corporate procedures and insurance forms was a family terrified about their father's injury and their financial future. Maya spent the next hour translating, advocating, and connecting Maria with resources she hadn't known existed. Harrison stood back, watching Maya work with a skill that had nothing to do with business training and everything to do with understanding human need. She wasn't just translating words, she was translating fears, hopes, practical concerns about medical bills and lost wages and children who depended on their father's steady paycheck. Carlos has been with Sterling for 8 years, Maria told Maya through tears. He's never missed a day of work, always stayed late when they needed him. This job, it's everything to our family. Maya translated for Harrison, who had been listening intently despite the language barrier. She watched something shift in his expression as the human cost of the accident became clear. This wasn't just a workplace injury report, it was a family's stability hanging in the balance. Tell Mrs. Herrera that Carlos's job will be waiting for him when he recovers, Harrison said quietly, and that Sterling Industries will cover all medical expenses not handled by insurance. If there are any gaps, any financial stress while he's healing, we'll handle that too. Maya translated, watching Maria's face crumple with relief. But Harrison wasn't finished. Also tell her that I want to review our safety protocols with Carlos when he's feeling better. Not to assign blame, to learn. If there's something we could have done differently, some way we could have prevented this, I want to know. Carlos's experience matters. As Maya conveyed this message, she realized she was witnessing the intersection of the old Harrison and the man he was becoming. The executive who took responsibility, made decisions, solved problems, but also the person Elena had loved, who understood that behind every employee badge was a family, a story, a life that mattered beyond its productivity value. Later, as they waited for updates from the hospital, Maya found herself sitting beside Harrison in the break room where Carlos's co-workers had gathered. The conversations around them were in both English and Spanish, workers sharing stories about Carlos's kindness, his work ethic, his pride in providing for his family. He always brings extra lunch, one woman was saying. When someone's having a tough month, Carlos shares his food like it's no big deal, never makes anyone feel bad about needing help. Harrison listened to these stories with an intensity that surprised Maya. She'd expected him to delegate the situation to HR and return to his executive duties. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in understanding Carlos as a person, not just as an injured employee. You know, Maya said quietly, when my mother was sick, the hardest part wasn't the medical bills or the time off work. It was feeling invisible, like we were just another case filed to the people who had power over our situation. What you did tonight, seeing Maria as a person, hearing her fears, that matters more than you know. Harrison turned to look at her, and Maya was struck again by the vulnerability in his eyes. I used to think leadership meant having all the answers, making decisions from a distance where emotions couldn't cloud judgment. But watching you tonight, seeing how you connected with Maria, that's a kind of strength I never learned in business school. My mother taught me that, Maya said. She said that when people are hurting, they don't need you to fix everything. They need you to see them, to acknowledge that their pain matters. Sometimes that's enough to help them find their own strength. Their conversation was interrupted by Harrison's phone. The hospital was calling with an update. Carlos was stable. His injuries were serious, but not life-threatening, and he would likely make a full recovery with proper rehabilitation. As Harrison shared the news with the waiting employees, Maya watched their faces transform with relief. These weren't just co-workers, they were a community. People who looked out for each other, who celebrated good news and shared burdens. It was the same spirit she'd grown up with in her neighborhood, the understanding that everyone's well-being was connected. Driving back to the office to collect Maya's car, Harrison was quiet again. But this time, the silence felt contemplative rather than distant. Maya, he said as they pulled into the parking garage, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you think it's possible for someone to change? Really change? Not just modify their behavior for appearances, but fundamentally transform who they are? Maya considered the question, thinking of her own journey from desperate job seeker to bridge builder between worlds. Thinking of Rose's transformation from scared young mother to community pillar. Thinking of Diego's quiet wisdom that emerged from grief and resilience. I think, she said carefully, that change is like cooking. You can't rush it, and you can't fake the ingredients. But if you're willing to put in the time, to be patient with the process, to add love even when it's scary, then yes, I think people can become completely different versions of themselves. Harrison nodded slowly, and Maya could see him processing her words against his own internal landscape. There's something else I want you to know, he said. Tomorrow morning, I'm announcing a new position, Director of Community Integration. It would mean working directly with me and Dr. Valdez to expand everything we started with the microloan program. The salary would be substantial, the responsibility significant. But more than that, it would mean becoming the voice for employees and community members who haven't had one before. Maya's heart raced. Harrison, before you answer, understand what I'm really asking. I'm asking you to help me become the kind of leader Elena believed I could be. I'm asking you to be patient while I figure out how to tear down walls I've spent 15 years building. And I'm asking you to trust that this company can become something Elena and your mother would both be proud of. Maya looked at this powerful man who was offering to transform not just her career, but his entire approach to business, to leadership, to the intersection of profit and purpose. She thought of Rose's apron, of Elena's photograph, of all the families like the Herreras who deserve to be seen as more than numbers on a corporate spreadsheet. Yes, she said simply, I'll help you build something worth building. But here's what Maya didn't know. As she agreed to step into this new role, Harrison Blackwell's transformation was about to face its greatest test. Forces within Sterling Industries were already mobilizing against the changes he was implementing, viewing his newfound humanity as weakness rather than strength. The board of directors had been quietly questioning his leadership, wondering if his emotional decisions were putting the company's profitability at risk. And Maya, as the visible symbol of his new direction, was about to become the target of corporate politics more ruthless than anything she'd ever encountered. The real battle for the soul of Sterling Industries was just beginning, and neither Maya nor Harrison could imagine how much they would have to sacrifice to protect the vision they were building together. But one thing was certain: they were no longer fighting alone, and that partnership was about to prove more powerful than either of them had dared to hope. I know this is getting intense, and your heart might be racing with everything that's unfolding. If you're as invested in Maya and Harrison's journey as I am, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments, what do you think will happen when corporate politics clash with their mission to transform Sterling Industries? The answer might surprise you. Maya's promotion to Director of Community Integration lasted exactly 6 weeks. Before the corporate wolves began circling, she was reviewing community grant applications in her new office when Jennifer Walsh appeared in her doorway, face pale with concern. Maya, there's an emergency board meeting in 10 minutes. Harrison wants you there. The boardroom felt different this time, charged with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Around the massive mahogany table sat Sterling Industries' 8 board members, their expressions ranging from disapproving to hostile. Harrison sat at the head, his jaw tight, every line of his body radiating controlled anger. Ms. Rodriguez, said Victoria Sterling Hayes, the silver-haired board member who owned the largest stake after Harrison. How convenient. We were just discussing your impact on company operations. Maya took the empty chair beside Harrison, feeling the weight of hostile stares. She'd heard whispers in the hallways, seen the way certain executives looked at her with barely concealed resentment. But this felt like something more dangerous. The quarterly reports are concerning, announced board member Richard Carlisle, sliding a folder across the table. Community outreach expenses up 400%. Profit margins down 12%. Employee benefits costs spiraling out of control. Harrison leaned forward. Those investments are already showing returns in employee satisfaction, retention, and community goodwill. Goodwill doesn't pay dividends. Harrison, Victoria's voice was ice cold. Our shareholders didn't invest in a charity. They invested in a profitable enterprise, and frankly, your recent decisions suggest an alarming lack of judgment. Maya felt her stomach drop as she realized she was the lack of judgment they were referring to. Ms. Rodriguez, Victoria continued, while I'm sure you're very passionate about helping people, this board has serious concerns about your qualifications for such a high-level position. A community college degree and retail experience hardly seem adequate for directing million-dollar initiatives. The insult hit like a physical blow, but Maya forced herself to remain calm. Mrs. Sterling Hayes, the programs we've implemented have reduced employee turnover by 30% and increased customer satisfaction scores across every demographic. Numbers that can be easily manipulated, Richard interrupted. What we're seeing is a CEO making emotional decisions instead of rational business choices, promoting unqualified personnel, spending company resources on feel-good programs that don't generate measurable returns. Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. What exactly are you proposing? Victoria smiled, a predator sensing weakness. A return to proven business practices. Streamline operations, cut unnecessary programs, and ensure that leadership positions are filled by people with appropriate credentials and experience. The implication was clear. Fire Maya. Dismantle the community programs. Return to the old way of doing business where profit was the only metric that mattered. You have 48 hours to reconsider your recent decisions, Victoria announced, standing. Otherwise, this board will be forced to call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership. After the board members filed out, Maya and Harrison sat in the empty conference room, the weight of the ultimatum settling between them like a stone. They can't actually remove you, can they? Maya asked quietly. Harrison's laugh was bitter. Victoria inherited 30% of the company from her father, combined with her allies. They control 45% of the voting shares. If they unite against me, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, understanding that her presence at Sterling Industries had become a liability for the man who'd given her a chance. Harrison, maybe I should don't. His voice was sharp. Don't you dare suggest giving up. Everything we've built, everything we're trying to accomplish, it matters too much. But Maya could see the war being fought behind his eyes, between the man Elena had loved and the corporate shark who'd built an empire. The board was betting that when forced to choose between his business legacy and his principles, Harrison Blackwell would choose what he'd always chosen: power over people. Maya's promotion to Director of Community Integration lasted exactly 6 weeks before the corporate wolves began circling. She was reviewing community grant applications in her new office when Jennifer Walsh appeared in her doorway, face pale with concern. Maya, there's an emergency board meeting in 10 minutes. Harrison wants you there. The boardroom felt different this time, charged with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Around the massive mahogany table sat Sterling Industries' 8 board members, their expressions ranging from disapproving to hostile. Harrison sat at the head, his jaw tight, every line of his body radiating controlled anger. Miss Rodriguez, said Victoria Sterling Hayes, the silver-haired board member who owned the largest stake after Harrison. How convenient. We were just discussing your impact on company operations. Maya took the empty chair beside Harrison, feeling the weight of hostile stares. She'd heard whispers in the hallways, seen the way certain executives looked at her, with barely concealed resentment. But this felt like something more dangerous. The quarterly reports are concerning, announced board member Richard Carlisle, sliding a folder across the table. Community outreach expenses up 400%. Profit margins down 12%. Employee benefits costs spiraling out of control. Harrison leaned forward. Those investments are already showing returns in employee satisfaction, retention, and community goodwill. Goodwill doesn't pay dividends, Harrison. Victoria's voice was ice cold. Our shareholders didn't invest in a charity. They invested in a profitable enterprise, and frankly, your recent decisions suggest an alarming lack of judgment. Maya felt her stomach drop as she realized she was the lack of judgment they were referring to. Ms. Rodriguez, Victoria continued, while I'm sure you're very passionate about helping people, this board has serious concerns about your qualifications for such a high-level position. Community, college degree, and retail experience hardly seem adequate for directing million-dollar initiatives. The insult hit like a physical blow, but Maya forced herself to remain calm. Mrs. Sterling Hayes, the programs we've implemented have reduced employee turnover by 30% and increased customer satisfaction scores across every demographic. Numbers that can be easily manipulated, Richard interrupted. What we're seeing is a CEO making emotional decisions instead of rational business choices, promoting unqualified personnel, spending company resources on feel-good programs that don't generate measurable returns. Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. What exactly are you proposing? Victoria smiled, a predator sensing weakness. A return to proven business practices, streamline operations, cut unnecessary programs, and ensure that leadership positions are filled by people with appropriate credentials and experience. The implication was clear. Fire Maya. Dismantle the community programs. Return to the old way of doing business where profit was the only metric that mattered. You have 48 hours to reconsider your recent decisions, Victoria announced, standing. Otherwise, this board will be forced to call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership. After the board members filed out, Maya and Harrison sat in the empty conference room, the weight of the ultimatum settling between them like a stone. They can't actually remove you, can they? Maya asked quietly. Harrison's laugh was bitter. Victoria inherited 30% of the company from her father, combined with her allies. They control 45% of the voting shares. If they unite against me, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, understanding that her presence at Sterling Industries had become a liability for the man who'd given her a chance. Harrison, maybe I should don't. His voice was sharp. Don't you dare suggest giving up. Everything we've built, everything we're trying to accomplish, it matters too much. But Maya could see the war being fought behind his eyes, between the man Elena had loved and the corporate shark who'd built an empire. The board was betting that when forced to choose between his business legacy and his principles, Harrison Blackwell would choose what he'd always chosen, power over people. The next morning brought a discovery that changed everything. Maya was clearing out her desk, preparing for what felt like an inevitable departure, when Diego called her cell phone. Maya, I found something in Mama's old recipe box. There's pictures and a letter with a man's name on it. Harrison something. Maya's blood went cold. Diego, I'll be right there. She raced home to find Diego sitting at their kitchen table with Rose's weathered recipe box open before him. Hidden beneath layers of index cards covered in her mother's careful handwriting was a manila envelope, yellowed with age. Inside were photographs Maya had never seen her mother as a young woman, laughing beside a man Maya now recognized as a 25-year-old Harrison Blackwell. But it was the letter that made Maya's hands tremble. My dearest Elena, I know you understand why I have to make this choice. The scholarship money isn't enough, and Harrison needs to focus on his business without worrying about supporting two families. Rosa is my best friend, and she needs help more than I need to follow my heart. Please don't try to contact him. Let him build something great, and maybe someday he'll find a way to help girls like Rosa's daughter Maya achieve the dreams we couldn't reach. All my love always, Elena Morales P.S. I left him my apron to remember me by. Tell him it represents the dignity and honest work, and that love isn't about having everything, it's about giving everything you have. Maya stared at the letter, the pieces of a 15-year-old puzzle clicking into place. Elena hadn't just been Harrison's lost love, she'd been Rose's best friend, the woman who'd sacrificed her own happiness to help Maya's pregnant teenage mother finish high school. Elena had walked away from Harrison to ensure Rosa received the financial support she needed to raise Maya and eventually Diego. Maya, Diego's voice seemed to come from far away. Who's Elena? But Maya was already reaching for her phone, calling Harrison with shaking fingers. When he answered, his voice was tired, defeated. Maya, if you're calling about the board meeting tomorrow, Harrison, I need to see you. Right now. There's something you need to know about Elena, about my mother, about why I was really meant to find my way to Sterling Industries. The silence stretched so long Maya thought the call had dropped. When Harrison finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Where do you want to meet? 1 hour later. They sat in Maya's tiny living room while Diego played quietly in his bedroom. Harrison held the letter in trembling hands, reading it for the third time as tears streamed down his face. She left me to help your mother, he said finally. Elena gave up her dreams so Rosa could have a chance. And Rosa spent her whole life telling me stories about a guardian angel named Elena, who helped our family when we needed it most, Maya replied. She never told me Elena's last name, never mentioned you. But she said Elena believed that love multiplies when you give it away. Harrison looked up at Maya with wonder and devastation warring in his expression. You're Elena's legacy, Rosa's daughter, but also the future Elena dreamed of. That's why you were wearing the apron. That's why you understood dignity and honest work. That's why you knew how to see people's hearts instead of their bank accounts. Maya nodded, understanding flooding through both of them. And that's why we can't let the board destroy what we're building. Elena and my mother sacrificed everything to create opportunities for people like me. We owe it to them to fight. Harrison stood, something shifting in his posture, in the set of his shoulders. The defeated man who walked into her apartment was gone, replaced by someone Maya had never seen before, not the corporate shark or the grieving lover, but the man Elena and Rosa had believed he could become. You're right, he said quietly. It's time to stop choosing between profit and principles. Tomorrow, we're going to show that board what Sterling Industries can become when it's built on Elena and Rosa's foundation, when love and business aren't enemies, but partners. But neither Maya nor Harrison could imagine the fight that was coming, or how their revelation about the past would transform not just their relationship, but the entire future of Sterling Industries. The board thought they were dealing with the sentimental CEO and his unqualified protege. They had no idea they were about to face two people fighting for something bigger than profits. They were fighting for the dreams of two women who loved them enough to sacrifice everything. The boardroom was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread through Sterling Industries that this meeting would determine the company's future. Maya sat beside Harrison, Elena's letter in her portfolio, Rose's apron folded in her lap, symbols of the love that had brought them to this moment. Victoria Sterling has called for the vote of no confidence with calculated precision. Harrison, Blackwell has compromised this company's profitability through emotional decision-making and unqualified personnel choices. Harrison stood slowly, his voice carrying the quiet strength of a man who'd finally found his purpose. Before you vote, I want to tell you about two women who understood something we've forgotten. Elena Morales and Rosa Rodriguez believe that true success isn't measured in profit margins. It's measured in lives transformed. He told Elena's story, Rosa's sacrifice, Maya's journey from struggling student to community bridge builder. He showed them the numbers Victoria had ignored: employee retention, customer loyalty, community partnerships that were already generating new revenue streams. Maya Rodriguez isn't unqualified, Harrison concluded. She's exactly what Sterling Industries needs to become the company Elena and Rosa believed it could be. Maya stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm not asking you to choose charity over profit. I'm asking you to choose sustainable growth over short-term gains. Our community programs aren't expenses, they're investments in the people who make our success possible. The room was silent as the vote was called. One by one, board members raised their hands. Victoria, Richard, and two others voted against Harrison. But Dr. Carmen Valdez, whom Harrison had recently appointed to the board, voted with him. So did Tom Shen, promoted just last week. And surprisingly, so did to longtime board members who'd seen the quarterly retention reports, the customer satisfaction scores, the community impact data. 5-3. Harrison had won. 6 months later, Maya stood in the newly opened Elena and Rosa Community Center, watching children from her old neighborhood learn computer skills, while their parents attended job training workshops. Sterling Industries had partnered with local schools, created scholarship programs, and established mentorship networks that connected corporate employees with community members. Harrison appeared beside her, no longer the distant CEO but a man who'd learned to lead with his heart. Elena would be proud, he said quietly. So would my mother, Maya replied, touching the framed photo of Elena and Rosa that hung in the center's main hall. They started something beautiful, didn't they? Diego ran up to them, now 9 years old and enrolled in Sterling's youth leadership program. Maya, Mr. Harrison, come see the garden we planted. As they followed Diego outside, Maya reflected on how love had multiplied Elena's sacrifice, enabling Rosa's success. Rosa's dreams creating Maya's opportunities. Maya's courage helping Harrison rediscover his humanity. Sterling Industries had become more than a corporation. It had become a community, a family, a legacy of love and action. Harrison took Maya's hand as they watched Diego explain photosynthesis to other children. Thank you, he said simply, for helping me become the man Elena always believed I could be. Maya smiled, feeling Rosa's spirit in the summer breeze, Elena's love and the laughter around them. Thank you for showing me that dreams don't die, they just wait for the right people to carry them forward. Before you go, if this story changed your perspective like it changed Harrison's, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories. And in the comments below, tell me, what does true success mean to you? Until next time, remember that the greatest wealth isn't what we accumulate for ourselves, but what we build together for others. Love multiplies when we give it away, and sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with the courage to wear our struggles with dignity, just like Maya wore her mother's apron.